Well, hello. My name is Christothea Herodotou, and I come from the Open University in the UK. I'm the last presentation in this session, but hopefully as interesting as the previous two. I'm going to present a study we did at the Open University, a large-scale study, where we gave access to predictive learning analytics data to our teachers. This is a collaborative work, and I'm happy to say that some of my colleagues are here today. Bart, Martin, Zdenek, happy you're here. Well, just a little bit of a background before I move into the study. As you already know and you're aware, PLA can be used to identify students at risk and can be a valuable source of information for teachers. Yet there are mixed effects when you give access to PLA to teachers. First, there is some difficulty in understanding and interpreting PLA data and visualizations. And also there is difficulty in identifying the right interventions that could actually be of help to students. Yet, some studies the last few years showed promising outcomes. For example, those teachers that did have access to PLA, they could identify problems of participation and they could actually take an action and intervene. Also, in another study, they enhanced professionally and they could develop a better curriculum material. So the aim of our study was to evaluate whether giving teachers PLA data would actually empower them to identify and assist students in need for additional support. So we wanted actually to see how PLA is used from teachers. Our data now is hosted in a system we call OU Analyze, or OU Analyze. Is a system designed at the OU. It aims to provide early identification of students at risk of failing, and in particular, identify those students that will not submit their next assignment, and give an indication and nudge to teachers that those students are at risk. It's available to teachers and to student support teams, and the overall aim is to improve retention of students at the university. Well, just a quick overview of what the system does. That's actually the module view. Here you can see that information about the current and previous presentations of the module under study. In yellow is information about the current presentation, and in blue is information about the previous presentation. So teachers get an idea of how their module, the current year, compares to the previous year. The lines showed students' activity in the virtual learning environment, VLE. Here I have to say that the Open University is an open and distance learning institution. That means that all of our modules are online. So an important indicator of students' performance is their activity in VLE. The bars shows the average score in a specific assignment, and you can see how this compares to the previous presentation. Also, there is a top bar which you can actually move left and right and focus your attention to a specific week you may be interested in. This is another view of the dashboard, the student view. Here you get information about each individual student. The blurring one are the names of the students. And next to it you can see dots, which are either green, amber, or red. And what this means is whether a student is actually at risk of not submitting their next assignment. So if there is a green dot next to the student, then means that everything is fine. There is no risk about the specific student. If it's amber, means that there is some risk, but not so high. But if it's red, then there is a real risk that the students will not manage to submit their next assignment. Also here you can see whether the predictions, how the predictions relate to the real outcome. So for TMA1, it doesn't show very good there, but it's the first assignment. The prediction said that this would be submitted by a given student, and it did. The student submitted the assignment and got a score of 88. I want to finish off this overview with the activity recommender, which I think is a very valuable tool for teachers. The system can give recommendations to teachers as to what advice they could give to their students. So for this specific student, they advise that they should visit block 2 in part 2 or visit activity 28. So they guide teachers to how to support those students that are at risk. So our specific questions now, we worked with 240 teachers that were given access to PLA, as opposed to 613 teachers that did not have access to PLA. And we would like to see whether those students who did have access actually help students at risk. Then we wanted to see whether there is a positive impact on students' performance and retention when using these predictions. So did their performance get better by the end of a presentation? And also try to understand why this worked or did not work. So we ran statistical comparisons between the two groups of teachers who had and did not have access to the predictions. We compare withdrawal rates by the end of the module, completion and pass rates. We also examined the usage data of OU Analyze dashboard. This is what actually teachers were doing with the OU Analyze the system, how often they logged in. And by the end, we followed up with some semi-structured interviews with volunteers. We sent out a request, and some tutors were willing to give us an interview. So this is the first set of results. I give you some seconds to have a look and let me know whether you think PLA actually worked or not for our students in terms of withdrawal rates. Just to give a little bit of a background, here is the table shows statistically significant differences in 3 modules, an arts module, a technology module, and the law module. Anyone would like to comment on this? No? Well, because of the time restrictions. It seems that giving the group of students whose teachers had access to OU Analyze or PLA data in the arts and technology modules did not do better than those that did not have access to PLA. It seems that the withdrawal rates were higher in the arts and technology module in the groups whose teachers had access to PLA, which is not very promising. Yet, in the law module, we had exactly the opposite outcome. The OU Analyze groups did better. So the teachers in the law module who had access to PLA did better. In terms of completion and pass rates, again, we found significant differences only in 3 modules out of the 10 we examined, in the education and the law module in terms of completion, and again, the law module in terms of pass rates. It seems that the law module is doing a different job from the rest of the modules we examined. Well, here the picture is much better for PLA and those teachers that had access to PLA. It seems that in these 3 occasions, students whose teachers had access performed better than the groups who did not have access to PLA. This is the usage patterns of those teachers who logged into OU Analyze and had access to PLA. The darker the color is, it means that more teachers from the respective module logged into the system and checked on their students. We don't know for how long, but we know that they at least logged into the system. As you can see, 2 modules, the education and the technology module had the more active participation the first few weeks of the module presentation, because you can see that it's darker. But then the more the presentation is about to finish, teachers log in less or not at all into the system, which actually means that they do not get any more insights about PLA and how, and do not use any more this information to help their students. The last source of information is the 6 interviews we had with teachers, which, okay, they were volunteers, they were self-selected, and we are aware of the limitations these may have. So in terms of actual uses of PLA, they found as most useful features of the system the color-coded scheme, the indication whether a student is at risk or medium risk or high risk. How the dashboard was used was up to the teacher. So when we asked them whether they found it time-consuming, they said that it's up to us how long we want to spend in the system. So we can't really say that this is actually time-consuming. In terms of its usefulness now, we identified differences in terms of the teaching approach each tutor adapted. So for those teachers that checked on their system, on their students often, either checking forums or emails, OU Analyze was a very, very useful tool because they could actually find all the information they needed, gathered together in a system, and they didn't have to look around for sources of information that would actually give them an indication as to what their students are doing. Some other teachers, though, were found to be not so active. So the system helped them become more proactive and enhance their teaching practices. So they said things like, we are now on top of our students, now I know where I need to put my efforts. So for those teachers, as if it enhanced their professional development. Finally, in terms of the predictions, we asked whether you think that you get a new insight from the system. Most of them said that the system actually confirmed their intuition. So they had in mind who might be at risk, and the system just confirmed this intuition. Of course, there were cases where students were flagged up as at risk, and these were students they were not aware of. So the system drew their attention in cases that needed some support from the teacher. So what they do, or what they did when a student was flagged as at risk? Well, there was varied interventions. Some of them said that when I see that someone is flagged as at risk, I just contact the student support services. Some others said that I send out an email to the students. Some others I text them, I call them, or I just do nothing. It seems that there was a variation in terms of how persistent teachers were in approaching and making a contact with those students that were at risk. Some were very persistent, some others were less proactive. So it was up to them, and the approach adopted was personalized in a way. In terms of their intention to use the system, they were found to be very positive, and they would like to use it again in the future. Of course, they ask for some changes, like being more sensitive to what activities students are engaged with when they are online. So what can we conclude from this large-scale study? Well, the stats showed a blurred picture. It's not clear whether using PLA actually has a positive impact on students' performance by the end of a module. I mean, here we had 10 modules, and 8 of them either had a negative impact or had no impact, no differences were identified. So we cannot really tell confidently that the system can have a positive impact on the student performance. Yet, in terms of the teachers now, it seems that the usage varied. I mean, some logged into the system more often than others, but by the end of the presentation, less and less teachers were found to log into the system and check the PLA data. Also, there was a lack of consensus in terms of what intervention strategy to follow. Despite these, outcomes, it seems that PLA can enhance and facilitate the teaching practice, especially within distance learning contexts where the signs as to what students are doing are missing. So you need to be really proactive to go and search for this information if you're interested in what your students are doing. So one of the, or some of the future research directions is to identify how, when, and what interventions to trigger in order to better support students that are found to be at risk. Well, that was all my presentation. Thank you for your attendance, and I invite any questions you may have. Any questions? Yes, please.
So you talk quite a lot about metrics like retention and pass rates, and I understand that there's you're looking at risk students, but have you measured the effect on the top end? Have you looked at whether your system and giving the system to teachers is having an impact on the number of students who receive distinction rates, or even less easily measured things like student satisfaction metrics, which presumably are collected at the end of the course, and things like that. And if you haven't looked at it, are you going to?
We haven't looked at these kind of measures because our aim was to save those students that were at the highest risk of dropping off, and abandoning their studies. I understand that this is a very good way to take this forward. And indeed, there are some initial insights from the interviews we had with teachers, because some of them said that I don't only use the system to help students at risk, but I also use it to identify the good ones and boost them even further. So indeed, there is much potential there to better support those students that are doing well, and congratulate what they are doing and their efforts, in teaching and learning. Thank you. Yes?
I have a statistics question. So what method did you use to determine statistical significance in difference between groups?
We use a chi-square analysis.
Okay, and did that allow you to do all 10 modules at the same time, or did you have to run separate analyses for each?
We run separate analysis, and this is actually something that we are going to take into consideration in the next round of evaluation of the system. Taking into account the type of module students are coming from, to see whether there is a variation because of that. But we haven't done this in this round of evaluation.
And did you control for like a type 1 error since you're running multiple statistical tests?
Yeah, we did so. Yeah, and we also control some basic demographic characteristics before we run the analysis.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'm really surprised to see that teachers stop watching. And it was a 10-week course, right?
13 most.
Yes, okay. Do you have any ideas why they do use it in the beginning and then sort of lose interest?
We don't have this insight. Actually, when we ran the interviews, we didn't have this information. So we ran the analysis after we had the interviews. But because this was actually an optional activity, it was like up to them to, log in and check on the system. So we don't have much insight, but it may be worth here to say that the teachers that work for the Open University have a contract, a part-time contract for a specific module, which lasts for the duration of the module, and most of them have also another job, so it's like their part-time job. So there are some restrictions as to the time available they had to check on the system and incorporate this into their teaching practice.
I have one more question. Did you try to see that if they actually did look at it, improved their students' rates better than if they didn't look at it? So did you align in the statistical analysis also the users as a factor?
No, we didn't consider for any information from the side of the students. It was focused entirely on the teacher's perspective.
That you take the actual the amount that they looked at it into the analysis, so that now you have a control group, right? So you have a group that didn't have it, but you don't control for the actual usage. So you could see if teachers that did use it would actually see better improvements in their courses.
Actually, we ran the analysis lately, taking into consideration whether they access the dashboard or not, and it seems that the outcomes were more or less the same. Thank you. Yes, David.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Have you thought about evaluating the activity recommender? So looking further at the actions taken and how that aligns with what's already there in the system?
Actually, a challenge we still face is how to record their activities when they go into the system. There is a form, like a digital way where they can actually quickly say what they did into the system, whether they found students at risk, what the action they took. But it seems that the response rate is very low in this in our request. So we are still, it is still a challenge for us to identify how best to record this kind of data in order to understand how they actually use the dashboard. But I don't know if Zdenek has something to add here in terms of future plans of evaluated activity recommender.
The new version of the activity recommender is being developed, and it will be presented tomorrow, I think, here by Michal, who is somewhere there.
There.
Look at him. And I would like to say something else. Typically, we use the system for level 1 courses, which are just beginners. And obviously, at these courses, it's more important retention than achieving some outstanding, well, we are not saying we don't want to achieve outstanding results, but retention is more critical. We also used experimentally for level 3 courses, and they said, we don't care about retention because this is not issue for us so big, but we would like to see whom we can somehow improve. So it was questioned from this area of the audience, and I think it exists, but it hasn't been part of this study. And in this study, we typically, and especially whatever we do, we typically are focused on retention and on level 1 courses where the retention is the main issue. And obviously, there are financial also implications of students who leave the university. So, yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Zdenek.
Okay. So it's time. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.